Hare Krishna. Hold on for one moment here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naronchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayadmudirahe Nashtapraheshvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text number 27. Yavat sanjayate kinchi sattvam stavaram jangamam kshetra kshetragya samyogat tadvidhi bharata shabha. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam stavara jangamam kshetra kshetragya samyogat tadvidhi bharata shabha. Yavat sanjayate kinchit sattvam stavara jangamam kshetra kshetragya samyogat tadvidhi bharata shabha. Can you chant? Anybody will like to chant?
यावत् संजायते किंचित् सत्वं स्थावरजङ्गमं क्षेत्र संयोगात् तद्विद्धि भरतर्षभ.
Okay.
यावत् संजायते किंचित् तत्त्वं स्थावरजङ्गमं क्षेत्रज्ञ संयोगात् तद्विद्धि भरतर्षभ.
Synonyms. Yavat, whatever. Sanjayate, comes into being. Kinchit, anything. Sattvam, existence. Stavara, not moving. Jangamam, moving. Kshetra, of the body. Kshetragya, and the knower of the body. Samyogat, by the union between. Tadvidi, you must know it. Bharata Shabaha, O chief of the Bharatas. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Purport. Both material nature and the living entity, which were existing before the creation of the cosmos, are explained in this verse. Whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. There are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving. And there are many existences which are moving. And all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. The relationship between material nature and spiritual nature is eternally going on, and this combination is affected by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, he is the control of both the superior and inferior natures. The material nature is created by him, and the superior nature is placed in this material nature. And thus, all these activities and manifestations take place. Om Gnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurmitan Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manabhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamayam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sijita Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathavitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paryana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Yavat sanjayate kinchit Sattvam Stavara Jangamam Kshetra Kshetragya Samyogat Tad Vidhi Bharata Shabaha. O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining. Yeah. So we see in this chapter there are various topics discussed in continuation of Arjuna's 6 questions in the beginning of the chapter of what is Prakriti, what is Purusha, what is Kshetra, Kshetragya, right? Kshetra is a field of activities, Kshetragya is the knower of the field of activities. What is Jnana and what is Geyam? Jnana is knowledge and Geyam, the object of knowledge. Right. So now in this section, we will see the summarization of these six, right? Prakriti, Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetragya, Jnana, and Geyam. And in that continuation, in that summarization, we see these words where Lord Krishna is mentioning, "O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field." So the field of activities is Kshetra, knower of the field is Kshetragya. So combination of Kshetra and Kshetragya is all moving or non-moving beings. Right. So the material and the spiritual nature both come from the Supreme Lord. Right. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Right. So the material nature is there, and then the superior nature, the spiritual nature, is a living entity. The living entity is engaged in that material nature or the material body. Right. When it wants to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord. Right. When it wants to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord, it is engaged into this material nature or material body. And the purport, Sir Prabhupada mentions, but whatever is created is but a combination of the living entity and material nature. Whatever is created is a combination of the living entity and material nature. Right. So there are many manifestations like trees, mountains, and hills which are not moving. And there are many existences which are moving, and all of them are but combinations of material nature and the superior nature, the living entity. So Stavara, which is not moving, like the trees, they don't move. But that also has a living entity in it, a superior nature in it. It's a combination of material nature and superior nature. And that superior nature is making the tree grow, right? Otherwise, the tree dwindles and it also dies. Similarly, we see the mountains and the hills, right? In the mountains and the hills also, there's a living entity, right? Among the mountains are the Himalayas. And then we hear about the daughter of Himalaya, right? We hear about the son of Drona, Govardhan, right? Which is lifted by Lord Krishna himself and brought to Braj. Right? So in the mountains and the hills also, so they are not moving, they are living entities. Right? So in that also, there is a touch of the superior nature. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity itself is a superior nature. Why? Because it is spiritual in nature. Sat Chidananda. Though it is infinitesimal, very, very minute, but it has the same quality as the spiritual nature. Sat Chidananda. Same quality as the superior nature. Right? The relationship between the material nature and the spiritual nature is eternally going on. And this combination is affected by the Supreme Lord. Right? The relationship between the material nature and spiritual nature is eternally going on, and this combination is affected by the Supreme Lord. Right? Therefore, he is the controller of both the superior and material natures. The material nature is created by him. It's not that it just comes into being. Like Darwin says, the Big Bang and these material elements came into being. But what is the source of that material elements? Even that material elements come from the Supreme Lord. Right? Material nature is a manifestation of Mahamaya. Where does Mahamaya come from? From the Supreme Lord. That's why he's the source of both the material nature, material world, and the spiritual world. Right. Gunamai bhavai ebim saram idam jagatam mohitam nami janati mamebhyam paramavaya. This three modes of material nature comes from him. He has created them. He has created them. Right. So this material world, Yogamaya, which is the internal energy of the Supreme Lord, and Mahamaya, which is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, it's also the energy of the Supreme Lord, both external and internal. And then the marginal also, the living entity comes from the Supreme Lord. He is the source. Right. Yeah, he is the source of both the material and spiritual natures. That's where it is. So are there any questions or discussions on this subject matter?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept humble obeisance.
Please accept mine, Krishna Prabhupada.
So, Prabhu, everything that exists is a combination of matter and the living entity. One way we can understand that living entity is Krishna, who is there even in atom of the matter as Paramatma. But it's not necessary that a jiva is there in everything. So if you say mountain is a living entity, then yes, there is a jiva who has the form of a mountain or a tree, non-moving. But there are non-moving or matter things like this TV remote, a glass of water. Now in that there is Krishna, Paramatma, but there's no jiva in it.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the understanding? Or there's even jiva? There's no jiva in dull matter other than the super jiva.
Yeah. So that's why the Stavara Jal Lakhani. So there are different living entities which are Stavara. And they are numbered like 100,000 of Stavara living entities. And that Stavara living entities are trees, plants, on mountains, hills, Stavara living entities. But not like dull matter as what you mentioned. In the dull matter, even in each and every atom, there is a super soul, but not necessarily a soul. So that's your question. Is that what it is, Amrita Babu?
Yeah, I just wanted clarification that the living entity in that case is Krishna as Paramatma.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Superior nature, because the material element by its own, it cannot even exist. Any other discussion? Anybody else has any point of discussion?
which is known as, maybe I can ask, it's a little off topic, more
Yeah.
in terms of the practice of the philosophy we learn. So the philosophy or the intellectual level makes sense. Whether we are saying logic or whatever, it seems very reasonable and makes sense. Now, to put it into practice, it's a little bit difficult. And we can also reconcile that this is because of our conditioning and whatever. And we also know the solution, that you stick with it no matter what. Like chanting, offensive chanting, but still do chanting, even if it's offensive. Stay in the company of devotees, etc., etc. And gradually, the taste develops. Now, Prabhu, there is something which is called purity, especially when we are sharing Krishna consciousness. And most of the time, the sharing is through words. And of course, people also see our actions, whatever we are performing. But like, for example, when we are giving pravachan, or when we are, talking about Krishna consciousness during book distribution, whatever it is. So at least I know in my case, that level of purity is not there. And whenever I'm talking about Krishna consciousness, it's, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of superficial, or it's from a philosophical or an intellectual level, mental. It's not from the heart. There's no, that transformation or that purity isn't happening. So isn't that a danger of hypocrisy? Should one continue to outreach, to share Krishna consciousness, Yare Dekhe Tara Kaho? Or, what's the cutoff, or how do we know that fine, I can actually talk to somebody?
Yeah. Good. Yare dekho tare kaho Krishna Upadesh. Right. So basically is what we do, whatever we have learned, we share. To the level of our conviction, we will be able to convince others. To the level of our conviction, we will be able to convince others. Now, Mahaprabhu met this Brahmana, was an illiterate Brahmana, he could not even read. Right? Illiterate Brahmana. Was holding Bhagavad Gita upside down, but still tears were rolling from his eyes, seeing the picture of Lord Krishna driving the chariot of his devotee, taking the humble position of a charioteer of his devotee, Arjuna. And Mahaprabhu mentioned to him that you have learned the essence of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Right. So, we may not be even to that level of that Brahmana, illiterate Brahmana. We may not have that conviction. Then we carry the book, right? We carry the book of Bhagavad Gita as it is, or books written by Srila Prabhupada, or books written by his sincere followers. So we may not know, but the author of this book, right, he is a pure devotee of the Lord. Just accept this book. That is also sharing Krishna Upadesh. Or whatever we have heard, we just repeat from the same book. Right? That's why there is so much resource available. So many lectures available. right? There is Bhagavad Gita, then there is the study guide of Bhagavad Gita, then there is guide of the study guide of Bhagavad Gita, right? So we just accept that and we speak something from that. Right. And whatever way we can, somehow we are from our upbringing have that knowledge of at least reading English or speaking about it. We just do that. So by that, that does not mean that we need to be super advanced to do that. Right? Because there will never be a stage where we'll become super advanced. Right? A super advanced devotee also does not think that he is advanced. Or Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he mentions that, I'm like a worm in the stool. Super advanced devotee, when he's writing Chaitanya Chaitamrita, the Lord himself also comes and manifests himself. Right. So that's why we also chant these prayers. Om Agnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya. Now, I am born in this mode of ignorance. Right. We take shelter of our spiritual master, even while speaking. And many times, sometimes we are able to formulate the lessons properly from that words, not by our own credit, but by the credit of our spiritual master who is using us as a puppet. Right. So we should go with that conviction that, personally, I have no qualification. But my spiritual master is very qualified. My spiritual master is very, very qualified. And I'm just repeating whatever they have given. But I'm just repeating whatever they have given to the best of my ability. In that also we don't have ability, but to the best of my ability, I will try to do that. Does that answer your question, Amitabh?
Yes, Prabhu. Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Everybody to the best of their ability can also ask questions or discuss something.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam. My question is, so we have soul, which is beyond this material energy.
Yes.
So the soul, and then we have also super soul, which is the Supreme Lord, as Paramatma in each and every one of the living being is present. So basically, the two distinct things, right? The soul and super soul.
Yes.
So when we try to realize, our true nature, so obviously, we were trying to understand what is our real nature, which is a soul. And then at the same time, we are also trying to understand our relationship with the super soul, Supreme Lord. So are these kind of happens simultaneously, both at the same time, or is it just one after the other? Or yeah, can you throw some light on this, Prabhuji? Just trying to understand.
I mean, the final part of it, if you can just, Sudhakar, just mention the last part. I heard about.
Yeah, basically, the two things, right? Soul and super soul.
Yes.
So when we are in this journey, right, the spiritual journey, we are trying to understand our true nature, right?
Yeah.
Beyond the matter and all that.
Yeah.
So when we do that, we are trying to, we understand our true nature as a soul. That's a self-realization.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it also we need to understand our relationship with the Supreme Lord, which is Super
Yes.
Soul.
Yeah.
So are these two steps happen simultaneously, or is it just one after the other?
Yeah.
So how does it happen, Babaji?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so Bhagavad Gita discusses about these topics, right? It discusses about Jiva, living entity with the soul, Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, and the relationship between them, right? How to link one with the other, right? The yoga, how to link one with the other in the purview of time. So that's the fourth topic under the activities, karma, right? So when we go in this path of self-realization, right? When we go in this path of self-realization, especially in the bhakti mode, that self-realization would be possible only when simultaneously we'll understand the Supreme Lord. Right? That self-realization will be possible only when we try to understand also the Supreme Lord. Now, complete manifestations of the Supreme Lord we won't be able to understand. Manushyanam sahastashu kaschidadati siddhe. Out of thousands of people, one person endeavor for perfection. Out of thousands of people who endeavor for perfection, hardly one person knows him in truth. Right. So that's very rare. Ananta Shesha, with his millions of hoods, is the expanse of the Supreme Lord himself, but is not completely able to glorify the Supreme Lord. So the Lord has unlimited qualities. So we won't be able to completely fathom the Lord's unlimited qualities. But in that process of taking shelter of the Supreme Lord, right, we'll start our process of self-realization that who we are, right? When we say that we are the spirit soul, right? So then one has to understand the spirit soul. One has to understand that, okay, the Satchidananda which we are talking about, where does it come from? Right. Only when the jiva he can understand himself completely only in connection with the Supreme Lord. Not like you mentioned on the path, on this path of us identifying our real Swarupa. So we'll be able to identify our real Swarupa only when we understand the relationship of us with the Supreme Lord. So this thing, yes, in one sense, they do go simultaneously. Jiva, Ishvara, and the process, linking the Jiva with the Supreme Lord. Like we have just taken an analogy of sun rays, right? So sun rays, I would be able to know about sun rays only when I know the sun, right? Sun rays otherwise by itself has no existence, right? You won't see sun rays now. Right now it is still evening time. You may still see some sun rays, but otherwise no means when it's completely covered with darkness, you won't see sun rays at that time. Right? So understanding sun rays means we have to even understand sun and the difference. That okay, the sun rays are emanating from the sun, but at the same time the sun rays are not sun. Sun rays are sun rays, sun is sun. So achintya bheda abheda tattva. Right. So that's how we can understand it. Oh, how can I understand self-realization without no? Because the self is of the nature of the Supreme Lord. Like the sun rays is of the nature of the sun. So we can understand the nature of the self only when we understand the nature of the Supreme Lord.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. Without that, there's no meaning to the individual. I mean, soul as an individual, there's no meaning without
Yes,
relationship with the Supreme Lord.
that's
Super
true.
soul.
Just
Yeah.
like the analogy, if you always keep this analogy in mind, sun rays by itself has no meaning without sun. Right?
Yeah. Thank you.
জীবেরও স্বরূপ হয় নিত্য কৃষ্ণ দাস।
Yeah.
Sun is there, ray is there. If sun is not there, how come ray coming? But we have to understand by the Shastra, by the Guru's mercy. And then we have the realization that sun is there. Even if I cannot see, it's not that means sun is not there. Not even here, maybe now dark, or how much I can see. My vision is limited. Or maybe other side of the world, the other people can see the ray. But because I cannot see, it's not that means that sun is not there. Sun is there. You are right, Prabhu. And by the Guru's mercy, by the Shastra, and by our faith and loving service, we can realize our relationship. And we have to understand also our relationship. What is my position? What is my Swarupa?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Anything else? Nice question, Sudhakar. Forgot to initiate the name, Sudhakar Prabhu.
Probably I haven't got it initiated, probably. Sudhakar Bellam.
Okay. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful discussion.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, there is 5-6 minutes more.
Yeah,
So if
please.
no one has a question, I could perhaps ask a few. This is on fault finding.
Mhm.
And we can understand it's a very dangerous exercise because it will destroy whatever we're trying to do. So one is that finding faults with others, and that's very easy to do. So some practical, and the other is when someone finds faults in us, Now that's very difficult to actually sit and listen, and we'll only react. So, what are some practical means by which this urge to find fault with someone, we can control it? And when someone finds a fault in us, we don't just, go for their throat and sit down and listen or whatever. So, what are some practical ways to handle this fault finding?
And sorry, I'm getting distracted in my thoughts. I mean, we are mentioning about fault finding, and then?
So fault finding is when two ways. When we have seen faults in others, it's very easy,
Yeah.
almost naturally, instinctively. There's no problem finding a fault with others.
Mm-hmm.
However, when someone finds fault with us, it's very difficult to accept it.
Yes.
And we immediately will either lash out
Defend.
or whatever.
Yes.
So the thing is, how do we control this behavior of externally finding faults with others, and when someone faults find with us, how we can internalize it and not go for their throat and react. So
Very
some
good.
practical tips that, I mean, day to day or real life tips that we can.
Yeah. So life tips is like when not by lip service, but we really consider ourselves insignificant. Right? When we consider ourselves insignificant, the problem comes with the ego, false ego, not the real ego, the false ego, which we may have, which not we may have, which we all have to certain levels. And that false ego makes us react, as you mentioned. It's called defending, right? Which even an animal can do that. Now you throw a stone to a dog will start barking. Animal can also defend, right? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, right? It's common between human life and animal life, right? It's common. So how do we internalize that? First of all, we don't try to find faults, right? We try to understand, the moment I'm pointing a finger on someone, right? See my hand pointing a finger at someone, 3 fingers are pointing towards me, right? With 1 finger pointing outwards, three fingers or 4 fingers are pointing towards me, right? So that tendency to find faults we should avoid. And at the same time, like, going back to that verse, Chinada Pisuni Chena Tarora Pis Haisuna. Amanila Manadina Kirtanya Sadahari. Tinada Pisuni Chena. Being more humbler than the blade of grass. Being more tolerant than a tree. Right? Being more humbler than the blade of grass. Being more tolerant than a tree. Not thinking about our own honor. What does the grass do? Right? People trample on that grass. It does not revolt. So that's why it's mentioned being more humbler than the blade of grass. Right? And tolerant than a tree. People do so many things. Try to cut the tree. What is the tree's fault? No, it just gave shade to you the entire lifetime. But oh no, suddenly one fine day you say, oh no, this tree is giving too much shade. Let me cut it now. Right. For our own whims, we try to cut it. So being more tolerant than a tree, now practical tips is it's difficult, but we take steps towards that. By understanding the philosophy of it, we take steps towards that. By not trying to consider low of ourselves, but be occupied in the service so much that we try to think less about ourselves. Right? We engage ourselves so much in the service of the Lord that you don't even have a time to think about yourself. The moment you try to start thinking about yourself, that's when the problem comes that, I'm so and so, I was this, I was that, right? But all this time of thinking won't come when you are completely engaged in the service of the Lord. So that is one practical tip which I can think of, is always remaining engaged in the service of the Lord, which then does not allow the false ego to creep in, or the Maya to work. Oh, see, I am the only one who is working, and see, all the others are sitting on the back. Right? All the others are sitting. But I am the only one who is doing some service. Right? So we need to rise from that Kanishta stage to just think about I everywhere. That I am this, I am that, I can give nice classes, I can give, I can do nice kirtan. Right? And cultivate the qualities of, just like Yudhishthira Maharaj was mentioned, if we can find a person, right? Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked, Duryodhana was asked if he can find any person superior than him. And he searched everywhere, he cannot find. Yudhishthira Maharaj was asked if he can find any person more inferior than him. And he also searched everywhere, and he said, no, I cannot find anybody except me. I'm the most inferior. While Duryodhana, with his false ego, I am the most superior. Who can be more superior than me? Right? That's what we need to control. Yeah? That's what we need to control. Is that all right?
Yes, Prabhu. I liked your suggestion that engage in service so that
Yeah.
spend time thinking about yourself all the time.
Yeah. And practically, you may have noticed that whenever we are engaged in service, all these things does not come up.
Mm.
Right? We are just talking to people or doing this, doing that, or so many things continuously, like our devotees were engaged in service yesterday during Balaram Purnima. And ultimately, they come up with nice, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so we'll end here. Let me attend to this. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Very nice.
Panchakalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhu
Sindhu evacha patitanam
Vaishnavyo namo namah.
Vaishnavinda
ki
jai,
Jai.
Bhagavatam ki jai,
Jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai, Nande Hari 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 Bol.
Hari Hari Bol.
Hari,
Thank
Hari.
you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.